Welcome to Around the Blockchain. Don't forget to like and subscribe. All right, Phil, welcome to Around the Blockchain. If you can just give the viewers a bit of an introduction as to who you are for me.
Yeah, firstly, Ryan, thank you for the offer to be here. Great to be connecting with the audience. Phil Talbot, founder and CEO of Savvy, a traditional SaaS model startup, and also CEO and founder of a decentralized project side hustle called Authentium.
Yeah, perfect. So how did you get into the blockchain industry, Phil?
So this happened in late 2017 over a couple of reds with a mate, and he told me about, did you hear about Bitcoin? And I said, bit what? And ultimately, he reached out to a very good friend of his to have a chat, who is based in the Netherlands, a guy named Han. Cut a long story short, I got intrigued by the concept. In 2018, early 2018, spent a good 6 months researching, understanding technology, the underlying blockchain technology, engaged with RMIT here in Melbourne to look at an idea that I had in the supply chain, worked with the 2 economic professors and 3 PhD research fellows on this idea, and then saw it all go crazy with ICOs. Thankfully, didn't invest in anything. Watched from the field, but was so intrigued with what that was all about. And what was most intriguing was this whole idea of being able to decentralize these predominantly centralized authorities. So that's kind of how I jumped into it.
I love how you were first introduced to Bitcoin over a couple of glasses of red wine. That's an awesome little introduction.
If I was honest, I think it was more than a couple, but anyway.
No, that's cool. So look, you have an interesting background in obviously the supply chain sort of side of things as well, in particular the food sort of supply chain. How has blockchain sort of technology come about to, I guess, disrupt that industry? And then I guess in particular as well, the couple of businesses you run, Savvy and then also Authentium, how do they sort of fit into all that?
Yeah. So what I've seen in the food game is predominantly a lot of traceability applications. So we hear the overcoined term of farm to plate or gate to plate, and and so on. And I think what most projects in the supply chain have been trying to do is to bring some transparency to allow consumers to find exactly where their goods, their food comes from. And particularly in countries like China, where food fraud is rampant, there's a real need to do that. And I think also on the consumer side, the demand from consumers now to have more transparency, particularly when you have products that shouldn't be ending up in products or and so on. So I think trust has been eroded over time. And so what we've seen, I think since, in the ICO phase, there was a lot of hype and talk and very little implementation. What we're seeing more so recently, there are companies like Trust Codes out of New Zealand who have a great technology for etching onto baby formula going to China, a unique code. We've seen quite a bit of supply, agricultural supply chain around grain. And these are fantastic projects, and they really have been delivering quite a bit of value to decentralizing, if you like, some of these networks. But if you actually look at history, most of those were built on Ethereum. And frankly, right now with gas fees, you couldn't run a business on it. So what's happened with a lot of the early stage developers with supply chain was that the real underlying infrastructure wasn't there to support the applications that were being built back then. But what I think we've seen now is a far more greater maturity in the infrastructure, and a lot of other blockchains that now are fast, are truly decentralized, are scalable. And so we're getting closer to being able to solve the blockchain trilemma and actually truly build applications that the everyday consumer can use. And I think that's the problem where we're at today, is there's a massive chasm still between mainstream use and what's actually being used. So food supply chain at the moment, very, very nascent. Lots of people have tried things. Nothing has been really, I'd say, taken foot, but there's a lot of work being done at CSIRO and other places to try and improve that situation. In relation to what Savvy does, as a founder of Savvy, we have been 8 years working from the food service distributor to the restaurant. So we do what Uber does from restaurant to consumer. Savvy does that from chef back on the supply side. So we automate the ordering process for restaurants and wholesalers. And what Authentium, and that's a centralized non-blockchain based project. And what we're doing with Authentium is we're now looking at the entire supply chain and trying to truly try to decentralize that. And Authentium, you know, is only about 8 months old, and we're in the current build process.
Yeah, awesome. So talk to me about Authentium then. So you mentioned that obviously, you know, at the moment with Ethereum, it's pretty difficult to run a business. The gas fees are incredibly high. Obviously, you know, the guys behind Ethereum that are working on the Ethereum blockchain are trying to bring out ETH 2.0. Have you built something as of yet on that particular blockchain, or are you guys sort of looking to explore, you know, different blockchains to help sort of keep, I guess, business costs and running costs lower than what they currently would be?
Yeah. So we did an assessment on Cardano, Polkadot, and Algorand. These are three very, I mean, obviously Polkadot and Cardano, they were core contributors to Ethereum, working with Vitalik Buterin, and they're great projects. We felt that the proof of work whole consensus algorithm had its flaws, and we felt pure proof of stake technologies was the way to go. We did some R&D back in mid 2019, and what we've initially going to build on is Algorand. And the reason we're doing that is with pure proof of stake technology, there's no forking, there's no miners, instant finality, 1,000 transactions per second. Bitcoin's about 7 transactions per second. Ethereum currently is between 10 and 15 transactions per second. Or Algorand will come out with 46,000 transactions per second later this year. And more importantly, there's no need to do staking. Essentially, if you have an Algorand wallet, you can earn 7% return without committing, locking up or staking any tokens. So there's architecturally, because of the consensus algorithm, pure proof of stake has randomness and zero knowledge proofs built in. You don't need to, it's completely trustworthy and highly secure. So yeah, we've settled on at the moment to build initially on Algorand, and that's kind of where we'll head. And probably the most important thing is an Algorand transaction fee is currently US 0.001 cent. So it really does make sense to use something where the transaction fees are incredibly low.
Yeah, absolutely. That's incredibly low compared to, you know, something like Ethereum. Even Binance Smart Chain is quite good, but that's still, it even betters Binance Smart Chain's transaction fees. So obviously, yeah, I can see why you'd want to go on there as well. Plus the 46,000 transactions per second is pretty phenomenal compared to obviously Bitcoin and Ethereum as well. So yeah, it seems like a bit of a no-brainer. How does Savvy fit into all of this as well, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, so Savvy is interested in Authentium's technology. So as a traditional company, we want to bring traceability to our 50 odd customers we have throughout Australia. So most of our Savvy's customers are, you know, 10 to 15 to $20 million businesses throughout Australia. They're food service wholesalers. They have the trucks, they have the vehicles, they have the refrigeration, large refrigerators, and they sell, you know, anywhere from 600 to 1,000 products. And they're obviously supplying restaurants, pubs, clubs, you name it. And the chefs really want to do two things. They want to know where the produce comes from, particularly fresh. So all the, meat, uh, fruit, veg, and seafood. And it's really important when they're serving up that they know when was that picked, how long's it been in the supply chain, so they can, and they can tell the customers. So Savvy, it's about adding value to an existing centralized business. Whereas Authentium, we want this to be owned by the community, run by the community, and we definitely want to build a developer toolkit that allows any developer. So what we're essentially doing is abstracting all the the blockchain coding and teal language and all the very sophisticated smart contract language. You don't have to write what's called teal, which is what Algorand uses, their programming language. You can literally write in Python, JavaScript, and with native, very simple web-based programming languages, and we're going to provide APIs. So a web developer can now can be essentially a blockchain developer. So if they want to start, incorporating our technology and the Authentium technology into their supply chains, they can do so incredibly easy.
Yeah, awesome. And I guess how far along are you with Authentium's, I guess, product roadmap? Like how far along, or how long, I guess, is it going to take for you guys to sort of start rolling this out to existing businesses?
Yeah, great question. So just as a bit of backdrop, we built our first working prototype MVP in September of 2020. We were invited, one of 9 global companies, Authentium, to the Oxford University blockchain hackathon. We participated with 8 other blockchain hacks, if you like, and that was sponsored by Algorand. We then we pitched, and obviously we came second in the pitch. And then Algorand Foundation, based in Singapore, loved what we were doing. And so we applied for an Algorand grant, and in February of this year, we received quite a substantial Algorand Foundation grant, essentially to open source everything we're doing, which we're really happy to do. So we started building in February of this year. Our first working prototype's due out at the end of this month, and we go into commercial trials with a very large, Australia's largest, I can't mention the name, primary producer. They provide 80% of this particular produce to Coles, Woolies, and in Australia. And they've been looking for a decentralized supply chain traceability. So they're in Northern Victoria. They got 100 hectares they're a grower, so I won't go too much more, but they love what we've been talking about. So we'll hopefully July through September we trial, and I'd hope by October we can announce a successful commercial rollout, the first of its kind in what I would say is a truly decentralized supply chain application, where most of the people that this company spoke to, IBM, SAP, all of these other large, even trust codes, they're all centralized. No, they don't want that. They want it decentralized. So, they really believed in what we were trying to do.
That's awesome. I'm quite surprised that something like this is, obviously you've got quite a big backing with the Algorand Foundation jumping on board. So I'm not surprised there, but I am surprised that there's obviously like a big need for this and a big want for this within the Australian market. I wasn't expecting you to say that. So you guys are obviously doing, all the right things, which is really, really cool. Obviously, I know you can't go into much detail as to who your client is, which is completely fair enough.
There's actually an NDA is being signed, so that's why it's
yeah.
And they want to leap on their market competitors, and and they've got some other initiatives around direct to channel to market, consumer traceability. They've got other products that get packaged up in pharmacies as tablets. So there's a whole really interesting set of things. And what we're doing, I can talk about this, is we're integrating into their ERP system. So this won't be a separate system. It's going to be running alongside their major corporate ERP system. So it's kind of a plug-in. And that's what's going to be very appealing to a lot of other growers, is that they'll just be able to plug in via API into their existing ERPs, and they can use existing barcode scanners, their existing RF scanners, without having to invest in IoT and all that sort of technology.
Yeah, wow. So that basically be able to sort of take this technology and kind of hit the ground running with their own existing businesses.
The idea is that we don't want any business to have to re-engineer the way they do things. What we want is that they just continue to do what they do. They pick, they pack, they process, they ship, and along all of that process, there will be points at which everything will be scanned and tracked and recorded to the blockchain in a way that gives trust to anyone who wants to scan the QR codes that we're going to generate. Will have uniqueness about them, and truly, the cost to do so will be less than a cent. So, the economics of it also stack up, which I think is the major problem we're finding with a lot of it. What we're seeing at this level is that the economics aren't stacking up. I mean, who's going to pay for IoT? I tell you, the farmers aren't. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of economics, so I know the food supply chain sort of industry, and in particular farmers and stuff, are doing it tough nationwide. So is this technology sort of aiming to cut down a lot of their costs and try and obviously help I guess make their businesses more profitable in the long run?
Yeah, that's absolutely on point, Ryan. What the fundamental problem we're trying to solve is, how do we get a better return for primary producers for their produce that they sell? And the problem that primary producers face predominantly is there are very large centralized authorities, i.e. supermarkets, that sit between them and the consumer. And they have no power to negotiate. I can give you some real life examples. There's a leek grower here in Victoria, a 100-acre farm. Cost them 75 cents to grow one leek. That's everything, fertilizer, labor, out of the ground. And they sell it to one supermarket chain for 65 cents. So go figure, they lose 10 cents for every leek they sell. They can't afford to refertilize. They can't invest in their properties. They can't, soil, all the things you've seen and heard about. And I think that's got to stop. I think farmers deserve a better. They don't want to hear from technologists walking on their farm telling them, we're going to put this in here, and flying robots and all that sort of carrot. Look, at the end of the day, if you can get a double the return, you could sell your leek for $1.50 and have a logistics network that gets it from where it needs to go to where the buyers are, and I get double the price. You bet the farmer he will adopt this sort of technology and do it in a decentralized way. That logistics is a really new innovation that we've come up with.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't believe hearing that, to be honest with you. A farmer obviously probably puts in the most work out of everybody within that entire process, and obviously to hear them actually having to sell something at a loss is pretty shit, to be fair, to be frank.
And the worst part about it is, he's told myself and this other lady that he does not want his name to be mentioned, otherwise he'll lose his contract, and they won't even sell to him. I mean, they're very coercive organisations. They don't really care. They're after the profit, and that's what very large centralised authorities have to do for their shareholders. I don't blame Coles or Woolies, but that centralised authority model has to change. And I think farmers need a better deal. And what we're trying to do is to really provide them an alternative channel to market where they do get better returns.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I wanted to kind of move on as well. We were talking prior to the interview about Adascos. Can you sort of talk to me a little bit about, I guess, what Adasco is, and then we can just sort of elaborate on that as well.
Yeah, so Authentium did some work very early with, some economic professors, and we came up, and I say we, so Authentium came up with this idea that why couldn't we, like a DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization, which I might add now in Wyoming and Texas is legally recognized as a legal entity in the US, that we could come up with a Adasco, which is a decentralized autonomous supply chain organization. So it's a virtual organization, but what it actually is a number of logistics players, whether they be individuals, companies, who coalesce and come together to provide that logistics from the farm gate to wherever it needs to go. But not only do they provide the logistics, but they also curate the provenance data. So using Authentium's mobile-based technology and patented QR code technology, which I might add, we're licensing open source and free with our technology, will enable these types of new organizations to come into life. And what I hope to see in, maybe in a couple of years' time is people setting up in local communities, rural communities, setting up these Adascos and starting to do deliveries for these farmers with the sole aim that these farmers will get a better return. They create employment opportunities for people who aren't working in rural communities. And with atomic transfers and smart contracts that will be built into our technology, as soon as the buyer receives the goods, signs for the goods, an atomic transfer will pay the delivery driver and the farmer in real time. Where right now, those farmers have to wait 60 to 90 days to get paid once the crops are being harvested. So not only are they not getting money, they're not making margin, they're also not getting paid for 90 days. And this makes it even harder for the farmer to invest if he's not getting paid. So this truly transforms. Adasco will truly transform the way supply chains, particularly primary producer supply chains, actually operate.
So how does that look like from the farmer to the delivery driver, obviously delivering the produce on to, where it needs to go. So either a restaurant or into like a supermarket. What's the issues now? You previously mentioned that it takes between 60 and 90 days for the farmer to actually get paid for obviously going through that process. But in this instance, it's actually going to be instantaneous payments. Is that correct?
Yeah. So it's probably best to describe this through a walkthrough of exactly the user experience. So what's going to happen is there's going to be a decentralized exchange where farmers' goods can be listed, and buyers, obviously, there's no one else in the middle, can go to this exchange and purchase the goods. So whether you're a leek farmer and you're a buyer in Dubai, you will be able to buy those goods, enter into a contract, have the logistics taken care of, have the whole goods tracked along the way. So the buyer, the seller, the delivery driver, they're all providing traceability. So what happens is, what the farmer just simply lists his leeks, when they're becoming harvested, the amount of leeks by kilos if he knows, and it puts a price that he's seeking. Obviously, like on any centralized or decentralized cryptocurrency exchange, there are bidders and you buy and sell. The same thing happens. Someone buys those goods. He's immediately notified that he's secured a buyer. Funds are escrowed. The buyer's funds are escrowed. Now, whether that be traditional fiat or crypto, that really is irrelevant. And then the farmer has that contract, and then he will pick the goods, prepare the goods. Once the goods are ready, he produces these QR codes. He is a consignment QR that goes physically on the outside of one of those cartons. And then there's individual QR codes, whether it be by bin or whatever. Once that's done, the driver, he's notified, just like an Uber, there's a job for pickup. It'll advise, okay, semi-trailer, needs forklift, whatever it might be. And that'll match the Adasco, the type of Adasco they need for do the delivery. Adasco rocks up to the farm gate, come to pick up your leeks, Mr. Farmer. They'll scan each other's QR codes on each other's phone. At that point, a proof of delivery token goes from the seller to the driver. So now the driver has an NFT token inside his wallet. The driver doesn't actually know that the mobile application he has is a full wallet, and he's just receiving something. He's essentially receiving a token. And at that point of exchange, geolocation, date, time, the transfer of what those goods are recorded on the blockchain. Driver goes around, maybe he hands it off to another driver or so, gets on a plane, goes to Dubai, gets off the plane. In the house or master airway bill, the details of the flight will be put in, the flight number. We track the flight through an open source flight technology, so that flight is tracked, quite available technology. Gets on the other end. The other driver who's picking up the consignment, he's a part of the Adasco. He will scan the QR code. He's got the goods. The seller's being notified along the way that it's landed, that it's been picked up, it's been scanned, and then the driver Dubai's got all the goods. He's rocking up to the buyer in Dubai. The Dubai buyer opens his mobile phone. He's got the Authentium application. They scan each other, transfers the token that the other driver has because it's been transferred all the way. It will validate that's the correct buyer. So no longer rocking up to Australia Post saying you're Johnny when you're not, because that QR code will confirm exactly that's the public key of the person who's supposed to have received the goods. He will then check the goods. He's happy with the goods. He signs the goods, accepts the delivery, and then an atomic transfer happens. Now all the drivers are paid, including the seller, and everyone's happy in that supply chain process. And now what you've done is you've got a complete trace on the blockchain of those goods moving through the supply chain with actors, i.e. the people in the Adasco, who are agreeing to simply scan a QR code between people who know in advance what they need to do. And that Adasco gets rewarded for doing, they get rated and they get rewarded for doing those deliveries. The more and more deliveries this Adasco does, I can look up that Adasco and say, oh, they've done 400 deliveries between Melbourne and Dubai. Great, they've got a 5-star rating. I'm going to use them. And so their rating goes up, their value of that Adasco goes up, and ultimately, what a Adasco is an investable supply chain. Ultimately, they will have a liquidity event on another exchange where that Adasco can essentially, like a ICO or whatever, can create a liquidity event for investors who invested in their Adasco at day one.
Wow, what an awesome process there. I can see so many different use cases for this, platform as well. Hopefully you guys get in touch with Australia Post or DHL, because they certainly need some help there. I could see this being really good for them. So
I can't tell you how many times Australia Post, when they actually get the signature, there's a smiley face. That's not someone's signature. They've just signed for goods and put a smiley face on the, and that's the problem. If you ultimately are a shipper and you are entrusted for registered post to get a signature, and that signature isn't the person who it's supposed to be, it's not, and you've now lost the goods, you've got no way of verifying that, you've got to reship the goods, you've just lost it, you've got to repay the freight. That's fraught with, all the problems of a centralized system, fraud and, intent to do bad.
Absolutely. Will the exchange that these farmers list their goods on be centralized itself, or is this entire process going to be decentralized, including the exchange?
Including the exchange, totally decentralized.
Wow, fantastic! That's
So think of it like an international commodities exchange. At the moment where you buy iron, or China buys iron ore. There's a commodity exchange. Chicago has one, but this is the new generation. It's a decentralized exchange. Australian products want to export. You get better dollars for your export. You've now got carriers who will do all the curation of provenance data, the Adascos. Even airlines, they don't need to actually frankly participate, but the consolidators at each end will know what they need to do. So yeah, really, it's now a freight company who wants to be a Adasco can now have a real point of difference in the market, because now they can say, well, we do supply chain traceability, and all they need to do is download a free app.
Yeah, wow, that's fantastic. How have you sort of approached different farmers and I guess farming organizations about this technology? I couldn't really sort of imagine that many farmers would be up to date with Bitcoin and blockchain, but that's I guess a pretty naive point of view. I'm not sure if I'm on the right track there, but how has that process been approaching different farmers to sort of tell them about this?
So my grandmother was a dairy farmer in New Zealand. My mother was a dairy farmer in New Zealand. Obviously I came out from New Zealand in 98 to Australia, and so I understand the farmers. So I actually truly understand and can speak to farmers and understand their challenges. And they seriously don't want someone to come and talk about technology. They just simply, the grassroots people who, very humble. They love what they do. They love their animals. They love what they do. And, they mightn't be the best business people, all right? But what I can tell you is that what I understand them, and what they want to know is who else is doing it. So our approach has been, let's get a primary producer who's big, who understands it, and can be the voice for all farmers. So it won't be us, because it's going to be decentralized. We're just going to provide the tool set for people to make this whatever they want. And it's all open source. So if Nigeria wants to do it with coffee, if God forbid, the cartels in northern South America, where the coffee is controlled and they now have opportunities to bypass those cartels if they understand it. So it's about, if you can use Facebook, that's where blockchain has to get. And that's why we don't even talk about wallets. We don't talk about public key, private key management. You log in using your Google, and that's it. And we've got a custodial private key management company who will take care of all that. As long as you can log in as Google, you can sign transactions. And that's what's missing in all the blockchain projects, is a real simple application that everyday people can use. And it's not there. It does not exist today. We're too early. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make this truly mainstream at a very low techno buyer, i.e. the farmer, to make it super simple. How do I get going? Just go to this website. If you can set up a Gmail account, you can set up and list something on a decentralized exchange.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I totally agree as well. I think that the space is really lacking something that's just completely super user friendly, really, really easy. That your grandmother could probably set up. So I reckon that's a pretty good rule of thumb. If your grandma can't use it, it's not easy enough to be used. So that's fantastic to see that you guys are obviously doing something like that, and helping these farmers sort of get out of these sort of, I guess, pretty bad situations that they're in through no fault of their own. Obviously, they do what they're passionate about, and they play a massive role. Obviously, domestically here and internationally as well, with supplying food you don't eat. We're all probably going to die pretty quickly, so pretty important part of the ecosystem. One last talking point I just wanted to chat to you about, the NFT technology behind all this as well. I find that quite interesting. Obviously, NFTs are at the forefront of crypto at the moment. They're being quite popular. You see sort of things like NBA Top Shot. You see people sort of selling artwork, but this is a completely sort of different avenue that you guys are using this NFT technology for as well. So I guess that's quite interesting to sort of talk about and touch on. How does all that sort of work? You mentioned an NFT sort of token.
Yep. Yeah. So in Algorand, they have at layer one, they have a thing called an Algorand standard asset, ASA. We can mint these. They're cryptographically token. They're essentially a utility token. You can essentially not make them divisible, so non-fungible in that sense, which means obviously they're non-fungible. And it literally is easy to create these in Algorand. It's almost instant. So we could create 10 billion unique NFT tokens. The NFT token in our ecosystem, the POD token, like everything else, is a digital representation of the goods as they move through the supply chain. And so all we're doing really is creating a physical, using the QR code, fixing the QR code to the goods. I mean, admittedly, the driver can also take photos. And what this does is provide the holder of the goods has the NFT token. And just the same way as the people, the person who bought that piece of art for 66 million, that it's registered on the blockchain that they actually own that technology. So we're no different, but we came up with this idea in 2018, and it's just a crazy NFT at the moment. The reality is it'll calm down.
I totally agree. I think NFTs will kind of be like any new technology. It'll sort of be really, really popular at the beginning, and everyone will want to sort of get their hands on it, which is kind of what you're seeing with, like you just mentioned, people selling some art piece. I think it was $69 million US, which is just obviously insane, right? So I think that sort of will start calming down. But I'm really interested in the underlying NFT technology. So I find it fascinating that you've sort of been able to take that and use that, obviously, in a completely sort of different industry. Phil, do you have any sort of closing thoughts? We've been going for about 40 minutes now, so I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but do you have any sort of closing thoughts for the viewers?
Look, the only thing I would say is Authentium, keep an eye on that. We're launching, we've intentionally stayed under the radar. We have our website built, but it's not public. But our GitHub will go public in September. where any developer can come on board. There'll be documentation for developers to be able to, take our, take from our repo, our code, and it will give them all the APIs, how they can create an NFT themselves, how they can create wallets, create accounts on Algorand. You'll be able to do atomic transfers, smart contracts, escrows. All of that is being built by us at the moment, and we've got a team of 19 people currently working on this full time. And look, I'm hoping, as final remarks, if anyone knows anyone who's in the farming community, then just watch this space, because we're really passionate about making a genuine, real difference. And we'll start with one primary producer, and we'll let them do the talking. So yeah, look us up in the future, and I'd hopefully like to think that by the end of the year we'll have some pretty serious announcements and traction that we hope lights up a little bit of Australia when these, particularly in Melbourne at the moment with COVID lockdown number 4, it's going to bring some joy to some people at least. And one of the other thing about all the existing supply chain, blockchain-based supply chain technology, and now I can talk about IBM Food Trust and all of that, they're squarely focused on the consumer. Right? They want to give transparency to the consumer, and they're trying to enable the supply chain. No one is actually focused on the farmer, and nothing is focused on the farmer. And that's our point of difference. We want to help the farmer, not the consumer. The consumer may have the demand for the traceability and transparency, but it's the farmers at the beginning of the supply chain who have the least power, and that restoring that market inequity around power in the supply chain, that's obviously what we're trying to do.
No, awesome. Phil, thanks so much. I really look forward to sort of hearing about Authentium in the future and the work that you guys are doing. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
No, you're more than welcome, and to all the audience, thank you.